Well, I'm here with Stephen Holmes of Virtusa. Thanks very much for agreeing to talk to us, Stephen. Now, you were telling us some very interesting things about the use of blockchain, so you have the floor, sir.
Well, thank you, actually, Bill. Yeah, we're actively involved in many aspects of blockchain today in Virtusa, and in fact, one of the things that we see is that blockchain is now starting to be deployed by various banks. It was only really July that we had the first set of blockchains that were actually supported in production. So people often ask, why is it the case that, things haven't taken off so quickly? So there's two aspects. There's the support in production is the first one. The second one is really standards. And in fact, we're actively involved in the standards as well, both with banks that are really what I call the 800-pound gorillas. They basically have the size, the scale to be able to set the standards themselves. Also with the various industry bodies, including R3, for example, in the financial services industry. And I'm personally involved in the ISO standards body as well, setting the standards for security and privacy. So what we see is that there's a lot of opportunity now for blockchain to be deployed, and actually using some very interesting technologies now, like zero-knowledge proofs and something called fully homomorphic encryption, which enables you to actually share data in a way that's private and secure, which means that you can then start to think about how you can collaborate between multiple parties.
Can you tell us more about that? I'm personally ignorant of that.
Sure, so if I tell you a little bit about fully homomorphic encryption, it's a technology that means that you can encrypt a number. So let's assume I encrypt the number 7, and I basically get the encrypted value, which is 11. And with that number, I can do addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division on the number. So if I actually wanted to give that number to another bank, so for example, we had to share information, then the bank wouldn't know what the original number is, but they can add their number on. So for example, 11, if I add 2 to that, it becomes 13. If I unencrypt it, it gives me the answer 9. So it means that you can actually ensure privacy in a secure way to actually enable information to be shared. Also with zero-knowledge proofs in blockchain, you can basically ask questions that you don't disclose the answer. You just say yes or no, which is quite an important aspect. It could be the case that you want to know, is this person a customer or not, for example. So there's a number of ways that blockchain will enable us to actually solve some of the challenges in business today that we can't easily solve without blockchain.
And if you had one piece of advice to give to banks looking at blockchain, adopting blockchain today, what would that be? Okay,
so I think the first thing I would say is look at the business case, because it's really important that you identify what are the business drivers. What we've done in Virtusa, working with a whole range of banks around the globe, we've kind of found there are 3 key business benefits in blockchain. One of them really is when you actually have what we call provenance. So in other words, banks will understand the KYC process and know your customer, but if you have a KYA process and know your asset, because whatever you put on the blockchain, you've got to have a process that has a unique identifier for that asset. But that can be useful on its own, particularly with one of the banks we're working with, looking at, for example, how you can prevent check fraud. Each check leaf can have a unique identifier on it, which just by having that in a blockchain is a useful way of sharing that information securely. The second area really is when you're looking at value from having all other parties that don't trust each other. The actual blockchain protocol can enforce that trust. And the third area, which is really important from a banking process perspective, is when you're able to have a chain of custody. So for an asset, I can know all the activities that have actually taken place on that asset. And because of the immutability of the blockchain, from a regulatory perspective, it's really a good thing to be able to show that between multiple parties. So what we found is if you can get one of those things, that's good, but if you can get 2 of the 3, that's excellent. If you get all 3, you've really got a fantastic business case. So, the key thing really is to identify areas within the bank that really can benefit from those properties of blockchain.